Broadcasting live from atop the Rocky Mountains, the crossroads of the West. You are listening to the Liberty Roundtable Radio Talk Show.
President Donald J. Trump mocks the communists, declares he'd be the greatest communist in history. We'll get into that. He deserves a lot of praise for that one. We'll talk about it. We're also going to be talking to Sheriff Richard Mack, CSPOA.org, about his incredible book, The Democrat Murder of America, Demagoguery in the First Degree. We're going to be talking about the LAPD and their flock cameras. We're going to be talking to an election expert, we hope. And it all starts now. Happy to have you along, my fellow Americans. The good sheriff is in the house. Welcome, Sheriff Mack.
Hey, thanks, Sam. It's great to be back with you this beautiful Tuesday morning.
Oh man, Donald.
And I have a quote, and I have
sir.
a real quick quote from the book.
Yes, sir.
Okay, this is President George Washington in his farewell address. Political parties are likely to become potent engines by which cunning, ambitious, and unprincipled man will be enabled to subvert the power of the people and to usurp for themselves the reins of government. That is exactly what happened between our Democrats and Republicans, and that is exactly the reason we wrote this book.
And that's exactly the reason Sam Bushman says the party's over. By the way, if you go to murderofamerica.com, then you can check out the details for the new book, and you can learn more about what's happening with this. The Murder of America book, really points out the Democrats because they're the ones primarily violating principles that make the destruction of America possible. Republicans are guilty too, but not near to the degree that, in my opinion, Republicans are. Republicans are bad, but they're not doing near the damage that the Democrats are. Now, there's some Republicans that are. Lindsey Graham, for example, I'm grateful, not grateful he died, but grateful that he's out, Sheriff, because he's one of the ones that's very destructive.
Yeah, he was. And you're absolutely correct about, look at just your first lead-in comment about President Trump mocking communism. He has said, and I totally agree with him, that the greatest threat to America right now is the communist movement in the Democrat Party. You really don't see any Republicans pushing for the extremism of socialism or communism. And as a matter of fact, they seem to be fighting it tooth and nail. And so this uniparty thing really sometimes just doesn't carry any weight.
You're right about that. Let's talk about this point that Donald Trump made about communism, because I think he did a superb job at this. He really basically, he said he'd be the greatest communist in history amid criticism of democratic socialists. So he highlighted that all these roads lead to communism, whether it's socialist, democratic socialist, national socialist, whatever. So in a bold statement during the NATO summit, is where he was. And he basically said he could surpass Lenin or everybody else if you ever led a communist regime, because he said all you got to do is you got to promise people things.
Right.
Using this hypothetical is what he focused on, basically saying, look, I promise you a free house. All I got to do is murder other people and take their house and give it to you. He emphasized his personal oversight in some of these national restoration projects. Anyway, he really doubled down. Let me just give you the third great example. When you're a communist, you promise everybody a sucker. I'll give you a sucker or a candy bar if you vote for me. And then right on down the line, no matter what, I can make everything awesome for you. The problem is, he says, then you'll be bankrupt in a year. Everything will be melting down. It sounds great on the surface, but the truth is he highlighted many notable moments. And it was a humorous interaction with a reporter about being so secure or insecure and shy. And really, he doubled down and just basically said, listen, your communist system flat out sounds good if you lie to everybody. Sounds good if you whisper in everybody's ear, Sheriff. But the fact is, it's absolutely bogus. And he put that on the international stage, my friend.
Well, yeah, they're so they're so obsessed with him being a king and a self-appointed king. What in the world do you think would happen is if we were a communist country? there's always a communist dictator that goes along with that. As I pointed out in the book also, Nikita Khrushchev. And folks, now the Democrat Party is substituting themselves for the fulfillment of the threats and warnings, maybe even prophecies from Nikita Khrushchev, who said they would destroy us from within. The Democrat Party is taking those reins and are doing exactly that.
They're literally carrying out his promise. I don't know if they realize that's what they're doing, but that's what's happening. And there's many Republicans that are on board as well, sadly. But it's primarily the Democrats driving this narrative, Sheriff, and that's your point.
It is. And Rick Dalton and I were having dinner last night, and I was giving Rick some of my books to spread around and make sure that he had one and put it out to his list. And a man came by and touched me on the shoulder, and I thought, oh, somebody knows me. So one of my old high school friends happens to be here tonight. And it wasn't. It was a total stranger, but I guess he looked at the book. And I really wish that I had invited him to sit down. He really kind of took me by surprise. And by the time I realized that I wished that I invited him to sit down, he had left the building. And he said, "It looks like to me you have the wrong name on the book." And I'm sure he was looking at the word Democrat and wanted to replace it with Republican. And I would so want to ask him what you and I were just talking about. Show me where the Republican Party is pushing communism and socialism. And yes, there's been Republicans that have pushed socialism. Graham,
Sure.
Graham did, and so did John McCain. But again, nothing to the degree that's going on right now with the Democrat Party.
And this is exactly why I highlight these two stories together. The Donald Trump story on the international stage, flat out mocking and rejecting communism, and your book at the same time highlighting this reality check, because it makes the point. MAGA or President Trump isn't promoting communism. Now, there's some things that he's doing that I'm not comfortable with. I get it. But when you compare the extreme nature, that's really what you're talking about, right?
Yeah, it is. And this lady that just won in New York, completely don't just defund the police, get rid of police, get rid of prisons. Do you know what she is essentially saying? We are legalizing murder, and there's not anything government will ever do about it.
And we're going to have anarchy as a result of that, which will eventually turn into a tyranny. All anarchies eventually turn into tyranny because somebody wants to crack down and fill that vacuum. And they get backed to do so by saying, well, we've got to have order of some kind, unjustified, but people follow that cycle if we don't keep that cycle in check with a constitutional republic, Sheriff.
Well, that's always the result of socialism and communism. That's always tyrannical. Even worse, it's dictatorial. Maybe tyranny and dictatorial governments are the same, similar, but probably not exactly the same. You could still have tyranny like the tyranny we have in the United States, where government just goes too far in a few things, like writing tickets every day, and just the constant barrage of bureaucrats who don't answer to anybody and just get to do anything they want, like the Sackett family in Idaho, who took their farm and land away from them because a big rain caused ponds all over their yard, and now they're violating the Water Preservation
Waterways Act. It's whacked out as all get out. It's crazy.
Yeah, that's how stupid government gets, because bureaucrats are left to do whatever they want.
Well, and they violate private property rights, and it goes on and on. The midterm elections are coming up. I want to discuss those for a minute. Jeremiah, let's go ahead and skip the floater break. Our guest, Mark H. Gotz, with us, ladies and gentlemen. He's the president of the Election Experts, Inc. private organization. It's a nonprofit organization designed to help people really make a difference when it comes to elections. Election Experts, or theelectionexperts.net, is the website. And they're unique in this election integrity situation. We'll talk about it. Hi, Mark.
Hi, Sam. And
Welcome
Richard, nice to be on with you guys.
Welcome to the show, sir.
You need to move to your right a little bit.
Move to my right a little bit? Okay.
Or move your camera to the left. There you go. Now you're
So
talking.
You've been around since 1998 working on election integrity, well before it became a flash in the pan, sir.
Well, it's an interesting thing to talk about. I mean, when you look at it, what our elections looked like in 1998 and then in 2000 with the Bush-Gore situation, which I was in the middle of,
Hanging
you begin
chads
to
and such.
you begin to see how the process works and how the process is controlled. You know, you were just talking about Mondami, and Mondami in
Skip
New
that
York.
break, Jeremiah. Go ahead, sir.
Mondami in New York only got like 14% of the vote in New York City. He only got 1 million votes. There's 8 million voters in New York City. So the apathy of voters is
What's
incredible.
that? 1/15th or 1/12th, I guess.
That's about 14% of the total vote that's available.
Okay.
So and if you look at these primary elections that we've been seeing, and look at the amount of voters that are available that are registered, and then the amount that actually come out and vote, you'll find that there's an incredible shortfall. I mean, it was the same thing in the Pratt race in California. Pratt's race is incredible. I mean, if you want to spend a little time on that, or tell me what you want me to do, Sam. This is your show, and I'm enjoying it just listening to you and Richard.
All right, I want to talk a little bit about parties and partisan politics. In Sheriff Mack's book, The Democrat Murder of America, Demagoguery in the First Degree, he really attacks Democrats, but he's really attacking the destructive violation of principles that are happening more so in the Democratic Party than the Republican Party. But really, when you read the book, hey, when you violate those principles, he really attacks everyone. Because the principles in America can save this country, and violation of the principles can destroy this country. And that's really what the book is about. That's why it's Demagoguery in the First Degree. But I want to bring this up because one of the big points made in the book is this idea of parties. George Washington warned against parties. I believe parties are criminal organizations. And I'll tell you why, Mark, and then I'll get your take. You may not go that far. Feel free to say what you will. If you say that's not right, Sam, whatever you want to say, don't, I'm not trying to bait you into saying anything. But here's the way I look at it. A party is nothing more than a private organization. So why, does the Republican Party or the Democratic Party get a better position at the trough of controlling elections than, say, my radio program, Liberty Roundtable Live? See, I think Liberty Roundtable Live should be able to pull the lever of government in my favor at the expense of everybody else. No, that's not how it works. And so we all have God-given inalienable rights and authority to delegate. That's what elections are about. We don't have the right to give that authority to a private corporation that then seats itself and then eventually over time manipulates laws and rules and guidelines and regulations and everything to where now it gets into the driver's seat and everybody else is disenfranchised. If I'm not a member of the Republican or Democratic Party, I don't get any primary elections in many states. I just have to wait till the general election. And then on top of that, I have to hopefully have a candidate that even runs on that third party, knowing full well that most of the time it's futile. Your thoughts, Mark?
Well, basically, you're going back to Washington and the factions that were created when the country was created. You're talking about, you had the Federalists and you had what they called the Democrat Republicans, which is what Jefferson was. And basically, they had just started the country.
Weren't they also called the Whigs at the time?
I'm sorry?
Weren't they called the Whigs at the time?
The Whig Party was, I think, part of Washington's party at that time, but they were really broken up into the Federalists, who wanted a federal government and strong centralized federal government. And then you had the
Anti-Federalists.
Right. They wanted states to be the strongest portion of the government. So there's always been factions. Didn't really happen in the first election because everybody was on board with Washington, and they felt that was the only way the country would stay together. So they even, he wanted to get out after the first term, but they convinced him that if he did, it could still cause serious cracks in the government that they had created. So factions go back a long time. Parties have come and gone. The Whig Party was here, they're gone. And that's not to say that the parties we have now will be here in 50 years, because they are going into poor directions, and we're getting more control over our elections by people not following the law. And it's amazing how in your face this is, that they don't follow the law. I mean, just point in fact, we have the Pratt race in California, which got a lot of publicity. And of course, Pratt ends up getting taken out of that race on the after-hour votes, as I call them, or ghost votes. If you look at that race, and I happened to look at it when it was in process, and on the night of the election, he was in second place with a strong 43,000 or 33,000 vote over the third place lady who was going to concede the election, but they talked her out of it. So then what happened was you had overtime, as I like to call it. And in the overtime, she comes back, and as a matter of fact, I was doing the numbers on this because I'm more of a numbers guy than a verbal guy, even though I wrote a book called How to Inspect, Validate, Audit, and Enforce Federal Election Laws. But there were 526,000 votes on election night, and they said that was 64% of the vote. At that time, Bass had 37% of the vote, Pratt had 31% of the vote, and Raymond had 25% of the vote. So you could see where the levels were going. But because it went into overtime, there were additional 268,000 votes that needed to be counted. Well, how did they run out in percentages? Well, Bass got just about the same. She got 36%. Rahman got 44%, and Pratt got 20%. So with an election that was primarily all vote by mail, the situation was that in the overtime, Rahman got more votes than Bass did to make up the differentiation over Pratt. That is by design, and that is what vote by mail can do if there's nobody watching it.
And to double down and make your point, Mark, Glenn Beck over at The Blaze just wrote, California's election system isn't broken. It's deliberately rigged, Sheriff Mack.
Yeah. Well, yeah. Mark, first of all, thank you so much for the work you've done. And so I know this is probably your biggest part of being on the interview, but I've got to hear this right away. So how do we prove and investigate that just happened? I want sheriffs to investigate these crimes, but I also want to have them something concrete that they can actually determine how that cheated. How did they cheat? And how do we determine that they cheated?
Well, okay, that's a very good question because we all want proof, and you get that through discovery. And what do we use for discovery? This particular situation, and I've tried to get this message to Pratt, that basically they need to go in and request a count of the vote-by-mail envelopes and the inspection of the vote-by-mail envelopes. He has the right to do that. Now, the election officials, if they have a problem, are going to throw everything they can at him so he can't see that. But California uses as their validity of their vote-by-mail signature match. And signature match is a great process. I've seen it. Bank tellers do it every day. And so if you go in and they say, we're not going to allow you to look at the envelopes, count the envelopes, because the audit is basically very simple. You take the total amount of votes cast, and then you take the total amount of envelopes and see if they match. Now, that might be a problem in this race.
Mark, you also take the amount of votes that are actually registered compared to the amount of votes that were cast, right?
Well, exactly. I mean, what the election officials tell you that was counted, you need to have envelopes that match that. Now, this might be a problem in this particular race because, you had the governor's race going on the same ballot. And the mystifying fact is that in the mayor's race, there were 758,000 votes cast, all right? But in the governor's race, and this is just in the top three finishers, I didn't do the whole run. Right. In the top three finishers in the mayor's race, 758,000. In the top three in the governor race, the total amount of votes cast was 1,650,000 votes. So somehow, 1 out of every 2 people who voted in the election for governor did not vote in the election for mayor. That's a little strange because I think mayors are closer to the problems that we all have rather than governors. So that's
and
something else.
Most of the time, if you go vote, you're going to fill out the whole thing and vote for whoever you think and whatever. Once you're there and once you have the ballot in front of you, that's for the most part a given, right?
Oh, absolutely. I mean, some people will just vote what they call the top of the ticket. If it's a presidential race, there's a certain percentage that'll only vote the top of the ticket. Well, the top of the ticket here is the governor's race, not the mayor's race. But to have half of the voters, especially with as much publicity as that L.A. mayor's race got, to have only half of those who voted, and this is just L.A. now I'm looking at. I'm not looking at the full state. This was just in L.A. County. So these things need further discovery, further investigation. It can be done by third parties. You can go in and look at this, but you've got to get
really,
the election
Mark, the sheriffs are the best ones to do this, though. After all, they're the chief law enforcement officer in their county. If anybody should do it, it should be a sheriff, shouldn't it?
Well, here's the problem. Sheriffs, in many cases, are politically elected. And so the sheriffs need to protect their position. This is the same thing with election lawyers. Election lawyers on the Republican side are basically corporate lawyers. Election lawyers on the Democrat side are primarily personal injury attorneys. There is a different concept of those two attorneys.
So what you're saying, to me is parties, again, are the core of the problem.
Absolutely. Because right now the parties are the power, and the power is the checkbook.
Sheriff?
Well, so I had a little question there, though. Because the mayor race is confined geographically just to Los Angeles city limits.
Mm-hmm.
So give me those numbers again, because there's the entire state of California has, 45 million people?
Yeah, but he's just talking about L.A. County.
Right. I'm quoting you numbers that I got from.
That's what I want to make sure. So you're talking about L.A. area, that actually more people in that area voted for mayor than they did for governor.
No, governor
vice versa.
Mayor.
More people voted for governor than mayor, which is odd because mayor is
Which we're saying that makes sense because it's the top of the ticket. What we're saying is the amount of differential is so extreme that it needs to be investigated because it's not normal.
Right on, Sam.
Well, if anybody should start an investigation, it should be Chad Bianco of Riverside County, because he was also a candidate for governor.
Well, now he's got a double conflict of interest. He's a member of a party, and then secondly, he was running in the race. So, wow, I don't know how to handle this one, Sheriff Mack.
But he could. What's even better, though, he can call for an independent investigation and make sure that happens.
And that's what he should do.
Yeah.
Well, that's the key. That's why Pratt should, because he's a little late now to contest the election, but Pratt should open the door to the discovery of the vote by mail, to match that the signatures matched on the votes that were counted, and that the amount of votes that were counted were all sent in by mail or by a vote by mail envelope.
Now, wait a minute. I've got another question there then. Is that just a human analysis, or is there some scientific approach to comparing the two signatures?
Oh, no, it's the same as they do at the banks. If you write a check and you want to cash that at a bank, they'll take that check and they will look at your signature and match it either with your driver's license or with what they have on their records.
But is it scientific, or is it just a human looking at it?
No, it's both.
Actually, 90% are usually done by human investigation, so then you have to look at who's investigating and what their agenda is.
Exactly.
We'll talk about it more, ladies and gentlemen. The first half hour's over. Mark H. Gotz with us. Check out his website because it's incredible. TheElectionExperts.net. TheElectionExperts.net. They've got a book to help you know how to get all this done, by the way. It's incredible. We'll be talking about that next episode of Liberty Roundtable Live. I'm Sam Bushman with Sheriff Richard Mack and Mark Gotz. God save our constitutional republic.